Okay guys, so this video is a bit of a vlog style video. It's kind of the next part to this whole thing. We ended up, if you guys haven't seen the video, we completely grenaded the transmission on this. It's self-destructed. If you guys haven't seen that, I'll put a picture here and you guys should definitely check out that video. So right now, it's pretty early in the morning. I'm about to head over. I purchased a new transmission, well, new. It's used. It's still about $3,000 for one of these transmissions, and to find one is pretty hard. There was like 6 of them for sale on Car Dash Part, which is like where you can search all the wrecking yards across the United States and even Canada. And there was about 6 of them 2 days ago, and today, or actually yesterday when I checked again, there was none. So I found one at LKQ, comes with a 6 months warranty. It's out of a 2018, it has about 55,000 miles on it. So it's still pretty fresh. I don't think there's gonna be any issues, and the fact that it comes with a warranty, we should be good. So we got the Ram. We got her all cleaned up from the whole trip, so we're gonna jump in and go pick that up. It's about a 40-minute drive, so let's go. All right, so we're just filling up with diesel here in California. I know a lot of people are interested in prices. $3.77, this is the cheapest place in town, but $3.77 for diesel. So we were playing kind of low threes when we were traveling across the USA. I don't know, like $3.10, $3.25, so $3.77 over here is not terrible, definitely more expensive, but a lot of people are saying it was a lot more here. Again, cheapest place in town. Check out this view, boys. So we're just on our way to LKQ in Fontana, and you gotta go through this little mountain pass here. It's pretty cool little scenery through here. Check out that Scat Pack wide body, you guys. I don't know if you can see it. That thing is such a nice color right there. So we're getting off, and we're almost there. Okay, so we're here. I guess we're gonna try to go to will call. Shipping and receiving. And we'll get this thing loaded up. All right, so we're here at LKQ. They got all kinds of stuff. You see engines and stuff. So we're just waiting. They're gonna load this thing up. All right, so as you could probably imagine, things are getting a little interesting. They went to load up the transmission and it is missing the torque converter. If you guys are familiar with the torque converters on these Hellcats, they are pricey. They're like $1,300 to purchase with a $500 core charge. So do the math, I think it's like $1,370. It's almost a $2,000 component that's missing from this transmission. So I've been sitting here for probably almost an hour now with LKQ. They're trying to go back and forth. I sent them a screenshot of the cheapest I could buy it online, which is like $875 plus a $500 core, so you know, $1,300 or so for that. So we're at a standstill right now. We're gonna see if they can help us out, and then we'll take the transmission. If not, I'm gonna have to deny it and find something else, but trying to work with them and see what we can come up with. All right guys, so she's loaded up. Obviously you can see it's got no converter on it, but they gave us a $1,340 discount on this thing. So couldn't say no. Ended up being about $1,500 for, you know, a transmission that's worth significantly more than that. So we're gonna take it. We'll see what we get into next. All right, so I just used our engine hoist and I got the transmission out of the back. I'm gonna set it down here. I kind of want to clean it up a little bit, but I can't really do too much since this is open here. And I'm just inspecting our torque converter since this one, like I said, didn't come with it. And I just want to make sure there was no like metal chunks in that torque converter. And it does appear that we're clean. So I'll show you guys that in just a second, but let me set this thing down. Okay, so she's down and safe. You guys already know me, I like my stuff to be spotless, so I'll probably end up degreasing this. Only points I have to watch out for are right here, where our oil cooler lines go, or our transmission cooler lines up to the front. I might just bag these, and then I'm probably not gonna be able to clean in there, of course. So I might just kind of give everything else off nice little degreasing, just so it looks all good and ready to go, since everything is spotless on this vehicle, as you guys know. But we'll do that in just a second. All right, so I carefully cleaned and degreased the transmission, looking way better than ever. Even cleaned inside the case. I was just careful. I didn't clean up top, just cleaned in the bottom here because I don't want to get anything in there, since that's the inside of the transmission. So did it carefully, but now she's clean. I'm happy with that. It's all degreased, so that's ready to go. Also cleaning these right now, trying to get all the staining and stuff off it from that whole mess. Seems to be coming off. A little bit of steel wool and whatnot, cleaning it there. I'm just gonna keep working on them and see how clean I can get those back to somewhat of their original finish. All right, super happy with how that's coming out, you guys. Like, that looks so good. Again, this is what they all looked like before, and it's all coming off. So you can see I've been working on that part. Still gotta do here. All right, well, that's pretty much gonna be a wrap for this day. Probably gonna continue because this video is not that long, but we've got our pipes all cleaned up. Really happy that those were able to clean up. Got the transmission, so we're well on our way. The other thing I will show you guys too, which I don't think I've showed you yet, is here is the torque converter that is from the old transmission. So yes, I know we do have to be extremely careful with reusing this. A couple things to discuss. So this is the oil that I've drained so far out of that torque converter. I cannot find a single particle in it. So if there was any debris, chances are we would at least see one speckle in this thing. And if, trust me, if I see any sort of glitter or anything in that, we're not gonna use it. I do need to keep this as a core. We are gonna be putting a high stall converter in it, but in the essence of time, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get one of those high stalls in it before we put everything back together. So that's why I'm probably gonna end up putting this in it. And then once the high stall one comes out, or comes in, I'll be able to take this out and we'll send this in for our core. So good news is the oil seems to be clean. So I'm hoping if this oil's clean, we also do have to flush out the lines and the cooler that's in the front. Unfortunately, fortunately, either way, the intercooler for the supercharger, or sorry, I shouldn't say intercooler, but the cooler is shared with the transmission cooler. So you can see these are two transmission lines. The water comes through and goes into the same cooler. So it's shared for the supercharger cooler, that tank that you can see over there. So to replace that, this thing is extremely expensive. So the good news is if the fluid's clean coming into the converter, I think that we're gonna be okay here, but I'm still going to push the fluid out of here. Probably tackle that tomorrow. Just making sure that everything is clean and our lines are clear. And then we may start to get into putting this back in. So I'm still trying to work out the fine details, whether we're gonna get a converter in time before throwing this on. It would be nice, since the transmission is off, to throw the converter in at the same time, but at the same time, I do have to get this thing back together so we can get some testing underway so that we can make sure that we're good before we make that really long road trip to Roadkill Nights. So I'm gonna jump on the live stream for Friday night. I'll see you guys over there, and we'll catch up in the morning here. Okay guys, so it's actually a few days later. I was just trying to do a little bit of housekeeping around here and getting some stuff in order. I ended up putting the Viper back together. As you guys know, we sold the supercharger kit off it just to kind of recoup some funds. Not in anticipation of that. I really didn't plan on that happening, but I just wanted to kind of recoup some funds and kind of devote it to some other stuff. So namely, so that we could focus on this. And then, as you guys know, we have another project on the horizon with the other Hellcat engine right there. So where we're at right now with things, like I said, new transmission's here, it's cleaned, ready to go, but I don't have the torque converter. I did decide after all that, rather than risk putting in that torque converter, even though it looked okay, rather than installing it and potentially wrecking another transmission, I did decide to box it up. We sent that torque converter off to Circle D, and they're supposed to be upgrading it for us. So they're gonna put a stall in it, take it all apart, you know, clean it, and they're gonna use my old converter as their core. Right now, for some reason, those converters are really hard to come by for some reason right now. They're like on a shortage. So Circle D didn't have one ready, so they're using my converter. They're gonna build that one out, and that's usually what these companies do anyways. They take a core, they build it, and then they send it back out, but he didn't have one, so he's gonna rebuild mine, send it back to me, so I'm just waiting on that, and I can't put the transmission in until I get that converter back, because as you can see, it goes between the transmission and the engine. The torque converter goes in there, so I can't install the transmission until I get that back, and I don't have a spare stock one to be able to throw on there. I was kind of doing some poking around, seeing if I could find a spare stock one, just so we get this thing back together. But I'm kind of at a standstill anyways, because I'm waiting for the drive shaft to come back. So I think I started to explain that. John's Drive Lines did come and pick up the drive shaft. He put it on his balancer, and it's still, even after all that craziness, it's still balanced out. So it was not, in fact, the drive shaft. Like I said, even though the drive shaft got a little bit beat up, nothing too crazy, it kind of survived surprisingly well. But even though the drive shaft was connected to all that mess, it's still balanced out on the balancing machine. But what we are going to do is reconfigure it a little bit. Instead of the steel 3.5-inch drive shaft, we're going to go to a 4-inch aluminum shaft. So that way it's got a little bit less weight on that tail shaft, just because if there's any vibrations in the transmission, the steel drive shaft was amplifying those. So having that extra weight from the steel shaft was really, you know,
exaggerating any of the vibrations that may have been coming from the inside of the transmission. So with having a 4-inch aluminum one, it won't be as much weight on that tail housing as well. But I'm pretty sure, the more I think about it, the more you guys comment on the last video, pretty sure it was in fact something internal. Again, you got to remember the transmission and the drive chain came out of a wrecked Charger that was wrapped around a pole or a tree or something of that nature, but it had a really hard side impact. So I think the original drive shaft that was connected to that, I didn't get it and I didn't need it, but I'm pretty sure it was broken. So I think it sustained a really hard side impact. So probably was something that was kind of bent inside the transmission, and it was kind of doing like a jump rope situation in the transmission. And just so a lot of you guys were talking about axle wrap and stuff like that, and you know, having the axle torque under acceleration, you got to remember it didn't break on the launch, it broke at the end of the strip. And when I was just, you know, when we were street testing it and stuff like that, even when I was not accelerating, it just seemed to have a little bit of vibration around, you know, getting up in the higher speeds. But it didn't see, you got to remember we trapped at 100 miles an hour at the track, so I think it was getting into some sort of vibration around there. But it didn't seem to matter if I was accelerating or coasting, but it would just seem speed dependent. So I think it has to do with something on that tail shaft was bent. One other thing is we did get a new Hooker Blackheart transmission cross mount. So we have this here, the cross member with the brackets and hardware. As you guys know, the other one, not from any fault of Hooker Blackheart, but just the destruction and the forces that came out of that transmission, ended up bending our old brace. So we ended up getting this one so we can put in a brand new one. Again, the old one got tacoed and you can see it out here. So you saw that straight one, and this one of course has this big arch to it from that destruction. What I am going to do right now though is I want to take out the TCM. If you guys don't know, the transmission control module is inside this transmission. They ended up doing it internally on these, so I want to take it out because we might need it. So most of the stuff is scrap at this point, but I am going to take out the TCM. So we're going to take off the oil pan and get that TCM out of there. Okay, so I'm just taking off these bolts, you guys, but I'm kind of just thinking to myself, like, if the tail shaft, or if something to do with the drive shaft was the culprit, I honestly don't think it would have been this deep into the transmission. So what I mean by that is it looks like the force was coming from somewhere in this middle section, because it broke the middle of the transmission right in there. So I'm led to believe that, you know, something over here was bent. And again, I think more related to the crash. I think this piece was not spinning true inside there, and that's where we had this huge explosion. Because I think if it was just the end portion of it, I think it would have just blown off the back of it. But the fact that the explosion happened in the center, I think something was going on inside the transmission. I mean, it could very well be incorrect, but that's just kind of my theory. Got a couple more bolts on this pan, and then this should be able to come off. Yeah, guys, I'm pretty sure that, I mean, this force is so deep inside the transmission that, like I said, you can see it's literally broken in half. Like, that valve body is, or like the channels that the valve body connects to, normally would run through there, and that's all supposed to be flat, and this transmission is literally in two pieces. So I'm led to believe that something inside the transmission failed, you guys, because that vibration is just way too deep inside here. Like, we're talking breaking the actual transmission in half. If it was a driveline vibration, I think it would have, like I said, just ruined the end of the transmission. But for it to be this deep inside the transmission, something had to be bent in this transmission from the wrecked car that we took it from. So there she is. Well, let's go see if we can salvage the TCM out of this thing. Okay, guys, so I can't use this since that sensor is annihilated, and so is this one, and it's all molded into each other. So I'm not gonna go ahead and use this. Like I said, if these two sensors were okay and I could swap this whole piece over, then I would have been all good, but I can't. So I guess we're gonna stick with the original TCM that's on it. So I'll throw this back on kind of put it back together with the rest of the junk pile, and we'll figure this out. Check this out, you guys. Oh, she's got a mind of her own. I was just looking at this a little bit more. So the actual shaft that runs right through the entire transmission snapped clean off. Like, look at that metal there. So it snapped off and out of there. So I definitely think that something of this portion had to have been bent for it to clean snap off that shaft that runs through the main body of the transmission. There had to have been a vibration a lot further up front for it to sit there and work its way loose like that. That's just my assumption. Comment down below what you guys think. But like I said, I think if it was, and the drive shaft guy has the tail portion of this that goes in here, but I think if it was just this, I think this part would have destructed. But the fact that this snapped, I think the vibration was probably coming out of something a lot further up in the transmission than the tail shaft portion of it. But like I said, not an expert, but just trying to analyze this. Look, literally the transmission is in half. I didn't do anything extra. Here's the back half of it, and here's the front half, and here's that portion that goes in the main, like the main basket and whatnot. That is absolutely insane. So definitely nothing really salvageable from this thing. It is just a pile of parts. But I don't know, I'm willing to bet something in here is bent, or was bent, and caused the issue. So that's gonna do it for this video, you guys. Want to keep it somewhat short, but kind of give you guys some information on this. So I'm just waiting on the torque converter to come back, or try to source out a stock converter for now. Kind of the two things we're dealing with right now, but I'll keep you guys posted as that kind of comes up. So I was going to try to swap that TCM so that there was less programming to do, but as you can see, that's not even an option for us. So we'll have to just put that transmission in and figure out the programming, you know, having to write the VIN and all that stuff once we get it in. So hopefully that's not an issue or a nightmare, because a lot of times you'll have to go to the dealership for stuff like that, but I'm going to try to do it with the Alpha OBD, and we'll sort that out. So if you guys enjoy this series, make sure you give a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, watch all the videos on how we got to this point if you're stopping by the channel for the first time, and how we destroyed this transmission, and we'll see you guys on the next video.